Zamfara State Governor Dauda Lawal, in his independence message, urged Nigerians to intensify prayers for peace and stability in the country. According to the governor, and I quote, "This moment calls for sober reflection on the plight of Zamfara State and by extension, the entire region, which has long been overwhelmed by unprecedented challenges of insecurity, health and education, food crisis, and infrastructural decay," unquote. As the state reflects on its 28th anniversary of its creation, the journey of Dauda Lawal's government so far in the area of education, security, government spending, and future plans following due process. However, according to members of the State Executive Council, the previous administration hardly followed due process in its spending, thus alleging that Matawale's administration negotiated with bandits, thereby resulting in the jeopardy of institutional and administrative arrangements and the misappropriation of public funds. Joining us now on this morning show is Abdulmalik, Abubakar, Gajam, Zamfara State for Budget and Planning. Good morning, Commissioner Gajam. Thank you for joining us on the morning show.
Good morning.
Well, Gajam, Zamfara State was one of those 6 states created in 1996 by the Sani Abacha administration. And now, 28 years later, Governor Lawal is saying, oh, this is a time for sober reflection. But in that opening narrative, there's this talk about how Zamfara, there is need for sober reflection on the plight of Zamfara State. Now, could you help us define this plight in terms of the threat of banditry and the misappropriation of public funds, which is something Nigerians would like to hear about? How are the funds misappropriated? And how is the Lawal administration dealing with this and the other challenge of banditry?
All right. So good morning, and then first of all, let me thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving me the opportunity to be here. When we talk about the 1996 and then Zamfara State, I was 4 years at that time, and we was all celebrating. I could remember running to my mom and saying that you promised me this and that when we get the state. And then looking back now, I, as a Commissioner of Budget and Planning, we have been in power. His Excellency Dauda Lawal has been the governor of Zamfara State for 16 months now. Now, when we are to reflect on this because of this plight, and we are faced with insecurity, we are faced with a lot of challenges that required His Excellency to declare state of emergency on education, to declare state of emergency on healthcare. Now, a person would ask, why declaration of state of emergency on these sectors? We have had a lot of people that govern the state, and a lot of monies have been put in place for this kind of entities in governance. When we came on board, we inherited a government from the present State Defense Minister. In that 4 years, they have received a FAC allocation of 290 billion naira, the local government allocation of 133 billion naira, and then collected a loan of 105 billion naira. But we inherited a government that there was backlog in gratuity. I believe we even mentioned it out in the media. In 2007, Zamfara State government decided to subscribe into the contributory pension. And since that time, the state government never gave in its part in the contribution. But however, there were deductions by the government from the civil servant. However, those monies were collected, I believe, in 2021, between 2020 to 2023, amounting to about 1.5 billion naira. And those monies, we have a report that have been shared. Now, the importance of me mentioning this out is the reflection. A state that could not even take care of the civil servant, the retired ones. Now, these are people that spend 30 years, 35 years working for the state. All their investment was there, and they was all joyful that they have entered this contributory pension scheme, and then a government that took advantage of that, and in some cases in 2011 contractors were paid through those deductions that they were making in civil servants, and then in 2021 the balances, they unsubscribed to that. So that is one. Second, on education. So you see, we have decimated primary schools, decimated secondary schools, and then the tertiary institutions, the infrastructure is completely almost to nothing. And when we talk about healthcare, the primary healthcare, when you go to our primary healthcare, you all see structures now. Even with this insecurity crisis in most of these villages, there are no functioning primary healthcare system. So, and then the insecurity crisis that started. This thing started with just 50 people, nothing more than 50 people going around rustling cows and then having maybe 3 to 4 AK-47 in their hands. But unfortunately, we have seen the growth of that. We have seen them occupying places, even controlling some part of the state. So when we talk about reflection, as a young person, I believe we haven't gotten it right. I believe we have been sentimental, and I believe the leadership of that state before now took government for granted. I think governance has to be a very serious business. That is the reason why the declaration of the state of emergency by His Excellency Dr. Dauda Lawal on the area of education gave us the room to start reconstruction and rehabilitation of over 300 primary schools through the BESDA funding, through the Agile program. His Excellency, that project is undergoing, and I believe most of the media stations across the nation have seen some of the successful stories coming out in the first year anniversary on that. And our tertiary institutions, starting from Gusau local government, which we have the Zakas College of Art and Science, Gusau, and we have the Health Technology, Safi, all are going through a really rebranding and lifted face. And then the declaration also on healthcare has given His Excellency the opportunity we have 22 general hospitals, and I believe over 60% of those hospitals have been reconstructed and renovated with fully equipped, like the Kaura local government and the Maru local government. Because this administration of His Excellency, we believe as a sensible government, you have to work with data. You have to start with baseline. You cannot start making correction from head to bottom. But what you can do is to start by baseline understanding where you actually have problems. Because when you look at the multidimensional poverty rate, over 78% of the people in Zamfara State are multidimensionally poor. When you look at the food crisis, insecurity crisis we have, and the malnutrition we have, when you look at even the student-teacher ratio, when you look at the whole of Zamfara State, I'm telling it now on live television, we only have between 87 to 103 qualified doctors. A population of almost 6 million individuals, 14 local government, 147 wards. So tell me, how do we provide care? And this, if you divide this number to only the 22 general hospitals we have, not talking about the primary health care that we have, there are almost 704. So, and then on education, you would see one teacher teaching 200, 300 students mathematics. So there are no balances. We do not actually utilize this. And when you look at the agriculture, the moment you see Zamfara State map or a plate number of Zamfara State, you see farming is our pride with 3.9 million hectares of land, but we do not produce, especially with this insecurity crisis. And then since 2011 to 2023, we have been having this insecurity crisis across the state. And now you would have past leadership saying that they have dialogue, they have done their best. Let them give you in writing, because these things are not up-head. And government is about sustainability. Right. So putting in something that when somebody comes, he would continue through that, and he would inherit what you have started, and then make sure that we do the right thing. But unfortunately, this is what we haven't seen. All right.
Thank you, Honorable Commissioner, for just highlighting some of the achievements of your principal in the last 1 year and a few months. During his Independence Day speech, the Governor Lawal, had said that part of his achievements was ensuring the welfare of members of of employees of the Zamfara State government, part of which was paying the backlog of salaries owed and implementing a 30,000 naira minimum wage. Surely, I don't know, that's in the past. What is the prospect of employees in Zamfara State earning the new minimum wage at 70,000 naira? Does the state have the capacity to pay? Have you started implementing? And if not, when would you start implementing that? Because you referred to the old minimum wage. And then very quickly, I know that Zamfara State also got 3 billion naira from the federal government to help to alleviate the effects of flooding and provide palliative support to some of your states. How has that been disbursed? What has been done in the state? I know sometimes it's a flood-prone area. So what are some of the efforts that have been made by the government based on the monies received so far?
All right. So the flood funding that came in, the major flood we had was in Gumi local government. So His Excellency sent, I believe, the entire team that has to do with the Zamfara Geographical Assessment Agency, and then the ZUREP also, and then the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development to assess those houses that were dismantled. And I know there was a committee set to identify a land, and then there could be, I think, buildings would start anytime soon. And then there was palliatives given to people of Gumi, and then there were palliatives also given to people of Anka local government. So that is for the palliatives. And then in terms of minimum wage and what have you, so I know there are 2 committees that were set. Now the Zamfara State system was completely not functioning. Because at the moment that I'm telling you, I know that committee started working because we want to integrate the nominal role and the payroll. Now, the nominal role is the list of all the public servant, civil servants that we have and public servants. And then the payroll is where we pay all these individuals. There was a gap, even for the assessment that they started in just 1 week. The gap between the payroll and nominal role is above 5,000, and there are even individuals that are more than 8,000 that are supposed to be retired, but they are not put into. So what that means is you have a list of, let's say, 10 people that are your employees, and you should pay them salary and give them all the basic necessary entitlements that they have. But on the payroll, you are paying 13 people or 15 people. So something is completely wrong, and that is what we are trying to assess. Because if you want to create a sustainable pathway for minimum wage, then there has to be sanity. There has to be cleanup, making sure that people that get those public...
Honorable Commissioner, when would the 70,000 naira be implemented?
Absolutely. The moment these committees finish up clearing and then making sure that we have this list of individuals that are legitimate.
What's the time frame? So are you saying in the interim, the people will still be earning the old minimum wage, which is 30,000 naira? What's the time frame? Because I'm sure you know that a lot of things have gone up with the rise in PMS prices, food has gone up, and so 70,000 naira would go a long way for the people who work. So what's the timeline for them to expect the new, the implementation of the new minimum wage?
Absolutely. So now, before we actually put in a timeline on that, we have to get this report. That is one. And secondly, when you talk about food and then food items getting rise and then giving minimum wage, so we'll stop that problem. Eventually, there would be an issue with that because you have to create productivity for sustainability. We have seen a lot of states that even with the past minimum wage of 30,000, some state governments started paying 30,000, but they could not sustain that. Why? Because, you see, you are not sure of what you get, even in fact, next month or in the next 2 months. So as a serious government, you cannot be touching things like this and leaving them and they will crash and you go back. You have to look at it holistically. One, Zamfara State, the biggest power we have is on the agricultural sector and the mineral sector. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is that is the reason why His Excellency is giving subsidized fertilizer and what have you. So we can actually have productivity. And if there is that productivity, you see the amount, the cost in grains and food items will drastically go down because we cannot depend on bringing most of these things. That is one aspect of looking at it. But eventually, if a governor that was determined to pay a backlog of gratuity of 7 billion naira in less than a year in his office, something that has been there nagging for almost 11 years.
Thank you.
11 years, and then the 30,000 minimum wage that was implemented.
All right, so that means that there's no timeline. So the people
timeline will be very
shouldn't hold their breath. They
Okay.
will be earning 30,000 now in the interim, despite the fact that the law has changed.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. No, real quickly, just listen to this, Commissioner of Budget.
Okay.
Does it make budget sense for your state to want to expend 62 billion on a Gusau International Cargo Airport, where your state is ranked 4th to the last in terms of health preparedness index by SB Morgan? Your state, Zamfara, is ranked fail, 13.04. And let me tell you the parameters. The indicators are budget per capita for health, average household size, human development index, doctor to population ratio, infant mortality, life expectancy, immunization coverage between children aged 12 to 23 and 24 to 35 months. Your state is 4th worst in the country. Fail, 13%. And you want to spend 62 billion. Is that not budget misalignment? Why don't you invest that 62 billion you want to spend on the airport on social development capital?
All right. So this is a very important question, and I believe, Rufai, this is kind of the conversation that we had even before this contract was awarded. One is this. You see, the biggest potentials we have in Zamfara State is the mineral sector and the agricultural sector. And now any person that you are to bring in Zamfara State for investment, because we have been in a way that fully dependent on FAC allocation, and that is not guaranteed with how the things and economy in Nigeria is going. So unless you invest in your state and open it wide open, there is no any serious investor that is willing to transport themselves from Abuja to Zamfara 8 hours to come and invest in these critical sectors, because we have outlined the prospect that we see in Zamfara State. For example, utilizing and harnessing our agricultural produce. Now, the local economy, we do not have enough resources to induce into that economy that we have so that we can create jobs, because you have over 65% of our population as young people. That is almost beyond 4 million individuals. And these people are between the age of 18 and 38. And they have no job doing. That is the reason why they are being recruited by bandits and what have you. So for you to create job, you have to open up investment opportunities. And without airport, it is now very critical. And sadly, it is so painful. It is not just the airport. We had to award a contract of 108-kilometer road of Magami Dansada Road, Gusau Magami Dansada Road. This is a road that all of the, over 70% of the grains production in Zamfara State comes through that area. And it links these 3 critical major local governments that we have in Zamfara State. And that is where the deposit of some of these minerals are. And then there is too much insecurity crisis. So we cannot allow that hanging. As painful as it is for us to spend this amount of money, we realize it's an investment that would yield result by a people that have hope and faith in making sure that in the next 2-3 years, Zamfara State will completely be independent in terms of revenue generation, because this airport now would open doors for international direct investment, especially in the mining sector. We are going to unveil by the end of the year the intention of the state to create international gold market. Now, the reason why we are doing that is we cannot be financing jobs internationally. Rather, we have to create them within our state. If you take our raw materials, you take the lithium, you take the gold and take it to Dubai or China, you are creating jobs for them. You are making their economy stronger. Rather, why don't we invite the whole world to come to Zamfara State and make sure that those resources, there would be job opportunities and what have you. That is the idea behind that. And when you talk about why don't we put in these resources in terms of social...
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Why
I can hear you a little.
Why don't you go meet the investors and sort out the line? Because you see, most of the people you want to create jobs for, by the time you finish building the airport, they will have been dead because they don't have health care. Why don't you sort out the incumbent problems on the ground first, pay the people well, get them a better list of living, and go source the investors. If possible, when you source the investors can even, when they see the need for it, they can even help you build the airport rather than expending the state resource. Because those are the things Matawale is saying against your government. They are saying you guys are collecting more allocation, but you've not done anything. He says that's why Dauda is fighting him everywhere. He says, you know, one of the reasons why Dauda is fighting because they came to collect a fertilizer contract for him and that never sailed. You know, he said a lot of things. Say you're doing better in terms of foreign, investment now from FARC, but you're not doing anything with the money, that you've plunged the state in a lot of penury and that you're struggling everywhere. So that's why, it's because you can't fix the problem. That's why you're facing him. Why don't you face the people that need all of it? I mean, your state failed in health preparedness index and you're building an airport. You can get the investors on Zoom. You can have the meetings on Zoom. You can go meet them where they are until you sort out Zamfara and make the people enjoy.
All right. So now, Rufai, 3 things. As a very serious journalist, I believe you see what's happening in Nigeria, and I like the work that you do, all of you, because we have to hold government accountable, and we have to make sure we discuss about these important issues. Now, when somebody says that the state government is not doing anything, I just told you, in less than a year, His Excellency Dauda Lawal embarked on paying the gratuity backlog. That is about 13 billion, paid almost 7 billion now. I told you, on the healthcare sector, over 100 plus primary healthcare facilities across the 144 wards that we have are being reconstructed and renovated with equipment to put in there because we are trying to change them and put them like the European walk-in centers for people. Now let me land.
No, because we have just about a minute. We have just about a minute to go.
The resources.
We have just about a minute to go. We don't have the whole day for this conversation. No,
so,
we don't have the,
then if you...
we don't have the whole day.
Okay then.
Now, we started this conversation with the plight of Zamfara, which Governor Lawal says requires sober reflection. Then you've told us a lot about the narrative of Zamfara. I'm quoting the governor when he was listing his achievements. Now, are you aware that when you were talking about the plight of Zamfara, you were saying nothing worked when you got to the state 16 months ago, the state has been stolen blind, no school was functioning. But the court, the High Court in Kano, has said that you people, Governor Lawal and his proxies, have been going around media houses, launching a smear campaign against former Governor Matawale, now Minister of State for Defense. Is it that, Governor Lawal and his proxies don't care what the court has said, and so you still continue with this plight created by Matawale?
All right. So, Mr. Robin, this idea, we respect the court because it is the court that gave us this mandate. At the end of the day, we are even at the Supreme Court. And the idea that you reduce the question that we put in, one of the responsibilities of government is to hold individuals accountable. And I started my narrative from 1996 to 2023. Why are you reducing it to only Matawale? One. And second, when you say that we politicize most of these things, we are not a lazy individuals. We can actually deliver for our people in terms of healthcare and education and hold people accountable. A person that received 290 billion naira on fact share, 133 billion naira on a local government account, got a loan of 105 billion naira without no project of 2 billion that was completed in Zamfara State. What do you want us to do? And that is one. And we are not saying that we are not working. And if Matawale, we discuss about Matawale because we face the most problem in terms of insecurity. Overwhelmingly, the people of Zamfara State in the 2023 election voted for APC in the presidential election, but they rejected APC in the governor's election. There was a reason for that. And now the payment this administration is given to Zamfara State people for voting for them is putting back somebody they have rejected in the area of defense. And tell me the experience they have on there. And when we bring these issues, this is a person that was dialoguing with bandits. And at the end of the day now, this is the person in charge of taking care of this insecurity. If Matola was a minister for youth or minister of elsewhere, we wouldn't care less about it. It is the responsibility of the federal government to do that. But the idea that you put this man in the center of our crisis, when over 6 million people are getting kidnapped, people in the population of Zamfara State, and in this local government, you cannot, the chances of me traveling from Fontua to Zamfara State and getting kidnapped or killed by bandits, the chances are more than 60%.
Commissioner.
And what have they done?
Well, Commissioner for Budget and Planning, Zamfara State, Commissioner Abdulmalik Gajam, would like to thank you very much for joining us.